On this slide, we're going to go through the inflammatory bowel disease, also known as IBD. This is part 2 of IBD. In this part, we're going to mainly focus on ulcerative colitis. We're going to go through the etiology and pathophysiology, as well as the symptoms, and then also the diagnosis test and treatment for this condition. Ulcerative colitis, like Crohn's disease, we don't know exactly what causing this condition. The only things that we know about this situation is same as the Crohn's disease. Mainly we're looking for family history. If the patient have a family history, then we'll look at the gene. If they have a mutation in their genes, as you see here in this slide. So there are certain genes that mainly the patient that they have ulcerative colitis, they have a mutation in these genes, which like the mutation in these genes is not only having effect on the digestive system, it's also having effect on the immune system. So just like it's making the immune system of this patient, the way that the immune system um, get activated and fight with the normal cells of the body, which is known as the autoimmune disease. Uh, there are other factors like as the lifestyle of the people has been changed. They think that that has an effect, just like increasing the population that have a Crohn's disease in the urban area, which they think that is changing diet comes with changing the lifestyle. And since the people change their diet, and these people, their digestive system, the microorganism, the normal flora of their digestive system cannot digest some foods, and then so all this together is just like causing IBD. Um, as you see here, some people they have a problem to digest the omega-6 fatty acid, trans fat, and sugar, which increasing the risk of the IBD in patients as well as ulcerative colitis. Other factors, they think that it would be antibiotic, NSAID, non-steroid anti-inflammatory drugs, as well as birth control, the oral contraceptive, also having effect and increasing the risk in some group of the people. Usually you would see this disease, ulcerative colitis, shows the signs and symptoms during the early age, 16, 17, so teens to mid 30s, and then so after that you would see it that it has if shows in the patient which their age is above 60. Same as the Crohn's disease, usually you see that they have the other immune system disease, such as the cystic fibrosis or psoriasis. Now, let's look at the pattern of inflammation in ulcerative colitis. Of inflammation in ulcerative colitis is a little bit different than Crohn's disease. We know that Crohn's disease and ulcerative colitis, both of them are inflammatory bowel disease. But the area that is getting involved in these two diseases, it would be different. That's why we put them into different sections. So in ulcerative colitis, the only area that is getting involved is the colon of the patient. And then as you see here, it starts from rectum, and this inflammation is gradually moving through the colon and increasing the inflammation through the colon. So that's one of the difference between ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. Crohn's disease, we're involving the digestive system from mouth to anus, but in ulcerative colitis, we see it's only we have it in colon, and then it's mainly having in the rectum area. And another difference that we see between ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease, in ulcerative colitis, mainly the mucosa or submucosa will get involved. Muscles will not get involved. So you wouldn't see the inflammation or the collection of white blood cells in this area. The only part that gets involved is mucosa and submucosa. So as you see, it's just like the top tissue is get involved. So it's possible that this patient have a perfusion, but it's not as a result as that all tissues getting involved. So this is another difference between ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease. Stricture is not as common as you see in Crohn's disease. Something that's happening possibly in ulcerative colitis, but it's not common as you see in Crohn's disease. So the stricture is mainly like you would see it in Crohn's disease, but it's still like rarely happen in ulcerative colitis. These two images comparing the normal colons and then strictures, the part that's like having the inflammations, too much inflammations, and obstructing the way, so causing the problem for the patient. The signs and symptoms of ulcerative colitis, some of them are similar to Crohn's disease. So the same in ulcerative colitis, you would see that patient comes and complain about abdominal pain. So they come and they say that they have constantly abdominal pain for a few days or for a while. But the place that abdominal pain happens in ulcerative colitis and Crohn's disease is different. Since ulcerative colitis involving the colon and it starts from rectum, so usually you would have a patient that they come and they complain pain in left lower quadrant. While in Crohn's disease, the pain was in right lower quadrant mainly, because in Crohn's disease, ileum mainly getting involved, but in ulcerative colitis, we have colon that is getting involved. When the patient have exacerbation, they have a fever. So that's another possibility that you would see your patient, they have a low grade fever. With fever and the pain, patient have a fatigue. And another most important sign or complication that your patient comes and complain about it is that having the changing of the bowel movement and the form of the stool. The number of the time that they have a bowel movement increases, and the stool will be loose. It will be like diarrhea. And also, it's important in ulcerative colitis, the patient comes and say have a bloody diarrhea. So that's different than Crohn's disease. In Crohn's disease, usually the patient doesn't notice a blood in their stool, but in ulcerative colitis, they come and complain about um, bloody diarrhea or multiple times that they need to go to the bathroom for bowel movement. In ulcerative colitis, since it doesn't have an effect on the small intestine, it wouldn't cause really weight loss as we see in Crohn's disease. So in Crohn's disease, is like the patient would have a weight loss and they would notice it. But in ulcerative colitis, they might have a weight loss, but it's not as much as Crohn's disease. And they don't have really that much malnutrition um, or malabsorption of the food compared to Crohn's disease. But it's something that we cannot say that it doesn't happen at all. It's still their colon is just like getting involved, and that inflammation possibly could have some effect on the digestion and absorption of the food. So the complications that we see in Crohn's disease, definitely the patient have a hemorrhage. The hemorrhage is mainly like you would see at the end of the colon towards the rectum, because like the disease starts from rectum. Uh, Another thing that is very common we see in the patient with the ulcerative colitis is pseudopolyps. So in this condition, as you see here in the image, there are polyps that grows in the colon of the patient, but they are not cancerous. But always they have some polyps that growing in there. And we need to watch them because these patients, they are high risk for having the colon cancer. So they need to uh, be observed, and we need to do the colonoscopy in this patient. Depends on the situation and the number of the polyps. If like any of the polyps are precancerous or not, so the years would be different, will be between 3 to 5 years. It depends on the situation of the patient. Future is something that happens rarely in the patient with ulcerative colitis, but because of the inflammation, it could happen in some patients. Toxic megacolon, in other hand, is more common in ulcerative colitis compared to Crohn's disease. So you would see more toxic megacolon as you see here in the image. So the colon get dilated as you see here. It's getting very dilated, and if it's stretched out too much, then you would have the perfusion. So perfusion in ulcerative colitis is mainly as a result of the stretching of the colon rather than like having the damage happens to all the layer of the colon. So that's mainly the reason that these patients have the perfusion is as a result of the toxic megacolon. And toxic megacolon is like when the inflammation happens and it's like having effect on the membrane and also the muscles and nerve of the colon, and then so just like causing the inflammation in the colon of this patient. For diagnosis, there are different ways we can do diagnosis in these patients. The most common one is like transabdominal ultrasound. So this is like something that we can do it very fast to figure out if the patient have a toxic megacolon. Um, the most accurate one is CT scan and MRI. It shows us the perfusion as well. Um, Another thing that we can do for this patient is doing the colonoscopy. So in the colonoscopy, we can see the tissue, if there is any bleeding happening, if the patient have a polyp, get the biopsy of the polyps, and then see if they are cancerous or not. So that's very important to do the colonoscopy if we think that the patient have a ulcerative colitis. CBC also can be done to see if there's like it might like help us with the increasing of the white blood cells, or like if the patient have anemia as a result of bleeding. And double contrast barium enema, that's another way that we will do the exam. It's just like showing us, as we see here in the image, if the patient have a toxic megacolon or not. Before we doing it, we need to make sure that the patient doesn't have obstruction in the colon, as well as like doesn't have allergy, and then to the injection for the barium enema, as well as doesn't have a perfusion. So it's very important to check those before we do the barium enema. Based on the situation of the patient, the severity of the case, and the history that the patient give it to us, the drug therapy would be different. So depends on that how many times a day they have a bowel movement, the severity of the disease would be different. For example, in the mild form of ulcerative colitis, the patient doesn't have no more than semi-formed stools, and it may contain some blood. While in the moderate form of this disease, the patient have up to 10 stools per day, and it increases the bleeding. Usually this patient they comes with some other symptoms such as fever, um, some anemia, mild anemia, and anorexia. In severe case of the ulcerative colitis, the patient have more than 10, so it's like it could be 10 to 20 times bowel movement a day. While the number of the bowel movement increasing, the amount of the blood that patient loses through diarrhea also increases. And since the patient have a multiple times a lot of bowel movement, if you get the sample from the patient, you would see it contains mucus as well. So in this patient, other than we see the other signs and symptoms that we saw in the mild and moderate form, they also have a rapid weight loss. Usually it's greater than 10% of their total body weight. And these patients, they show more anemia, and also like as a result of losing too much water, the patient have a dehydration. With anemia and dehydration, the patient would have tachycardia as well. So we need to pay attention with this situation and listen to the patient, see how many times a day they have a bowel movement. Based on the severity, if the patient have the mild form of ulcerative colitis, we can start with 5 amino sulfuric acid. So we give this one to the patient, and if the patient feels better, it would be great. This medication could be both oral and the rectal form. With the ulcerative colitis, it's recommended to combine oral and rectal form, both of them together when we want to give the medication to the patient. Also, we can give the oral corticosteroid as well. So for oral corticosteroid, we can give the prednisone, or we can give budesonide. And then like budesonide, but we have it in the oral and rectal form as well, which like again, it's recommended to give both forms if it will be more effective than giving only one form to the patient. In the moderate form of the ulcerative colitis, we give the again like oral corticosteroid to the patient. For the oral corticosteroid, we can choose prednisone. Also, we can combine this medication after like a patient feels a little bit better. We can give the azithromycin to the patient. So azithromycin, it have an effect on the purine production, and it prevents like the purine production. It would have an effect on um, the cells modulation and everything in the cells. So it would have some effect on the inflammation that's happening in the cell, and as well as if the patient like have a cancer, that could be beneficial for the patient. And if the patient have the severe form of ulcerative colitis, methylprednisolone, it could be a good choice. We can give to the patient in the IV form, and then we can move to the other medication, such as anti-TNF agonist medications. Infliximab is the medication that is in this group. Sometimes the patient responded to infliximab. That would be great. But if the patient doesn't respond to anti-TNF agonist medications, then we will move on to another medication. Vidoflumab is another medication that we can give to the patient. This prevents the T cells to bind to the mucosa, and by preventing the T cells is just like preventing more inflammations happen in the tissue of the patient. Cyclosporine also is another medication that could be a good choice for the patient that they have ulcerative colitis. This one also like having it has the um, immunomodulators effect. So it just like would have like azathromycin would have an effect on the purine production inside the cells. So we give these medications to the patient, but in case that the patient doesn't get better, the patient have a perfusion, or the patient have a cancer, then we need to do the surgery on this patient. Depends on the situation of the patient. There are two ways to do the surgeries. Uh, One is proctocolostomy with ileal punch slash anal anastomosis. So here in this kind of surgery, they remove the colon And then the patient have a temporary ileostomy. And later on, when the patient like healed a little bit, then they connect the ileum to the rectum. So this is a very convenient compared to the second form of the surgery. So in the second form of the surgery is known as proctocolostomy with permanent ileostomy. So in this situation, again, they remove the colon, but the difference is that the patient have the permanent ileostomy compared to the other one, which was temporary ileostomy. I'm done with this slide. Thank you for watching. If you find it helpful, please hit the like button as well as subscribe so it moves on to the top in the YouTube and other people can have a benefit of watching these slides.